to lose clients or business isn't going well, because he starts flipping out about how people are broke losers for not having tens of thousands of dollars to give him. And he always tries to make it seem like it's not a lot of money by talking about how much money he has and how 20,000 is nothing to him. But he only has this money because of the broke losers that pay him. So that's why I get so worked up about it, because he needs their money. And it's funny because his strategy is to yell at people who are barely scraping by and be like, look how rich I am. I'm driving around in a Lambo. 20,000 is nothing, so give it to me, which is so backwards. You know, it's like, you're broke, I'm rich, give me money, you idiot.
The fact that there's so many fucking grown men and women who don't have 20 fucking grand. Oh my God, that would be lame. Holy shit. You know,
the question is, if someone's got 20 grand, why the fuck would they give it to you, buddy? Now? Fucking roided out freak? Thank you.
Most people I know got millions, like, and we're not special. Like, we're at the bottom. Like, having some M's is whatever. And you motherfuckers don't have 20 grand and say it's expensive. And the program doesn't even start at, it starts at 3 grand. You guys, because I don't even understand how the you can have so little self-worth that in your one motherfucking life, you would choose to be a fucking peasant. It's fucking crazy. Who the fuck thinks that lowly of themselves?
Yeah, so that's Wes driving around in a Lamborghini and a Bugatti, yelling about how peasants don't want to give him money, which he needs to afford the Bugatti. Like, imagine spending all your money to finance this guy's lifestyle. You know, it's like, I'm sick of being a peasant. Let me help this guy pay off his Bugatti. That should help. And people think if they pay him, then they'll get to hang out with him or something. So he has to lecture them about that too, because they obviously expect more if they're paying $20,000. But Wes, he only does like a 20-minute call, if that, because he doesn't want to talk to these people. So if someone asks him how much one-on-one time they get, he flips out and acts like it's an insane question, because that's probably the most asked question and he's sick of hearing it. So he has to lecture them and try to convince them all it takes is 20 minutes and he can teach you how to be a millionaire.
Wait, here's the best one. This is how a dumb fucking 9-to-5er thinks. Well, how much time do I actually get to spend with you? What the fuck? We're going for fucking results here. We're going for value-driven results. What if what I know took me 20 minutes to tell you, and you would make millions and millions and millions? Would you fight to have your money be exchanged for time still? That's how fucking you know you're stupid. You guys are fucking psychopaths. If you're like, wait, how much of my money am I exchanging for your time? You fucking idiots. If you think that way, that's the first understanding that you're a fucking dumb shit 9-to-5er.
Yeah, and he can't spend too much time with his clients because he's busy. You know, he's got a lot going on, and he needs to get back to coping with getting gadooshed by his haters. That's more important stuff.
That they all sit there and gadoosh me. Oh my fuck. Oh my God. Imagine this stud, this ringleader of Reddit reviewers who gadoosh me. Oh, the world we live in today. No fucking way.
Yeah, so he's been going through it recently. I guess it's not easy getting gadooshed every day on Reddit. You know, it's a tough life for Wes. Even driving around in his supercars is now starting to take a toll on him. The poor guy has sore feet from driving around in his Bugatti. That's seriously what he was complaining about on Instagram recently. You know, how difficult it is to drive around in supercars all day, which I'm pretty sure he's just driving for the sake of driving half the time. You know, he's not even going anywhere. Like, he's just driving so he can record a video in his car.
I just don't even fucking want to. My feet hurt. You guys don't realize driving hypercars and supercars and SVJ or a Bugatti or something, that shit whoops your ass. Fuck, by the time you get in and out the motherfucker, you sit in it for 45 minutes, your back's blasted. You gas it a few times, you drive like an asshole, you're gripping the fucking floor with your feet and shit. Sometimes you just gotta take your fucking shoes off and put them on the fucking fluffy ass carpet.
So now he's basically just complaining about being rich. Like, this is supposed to be an alpha male, but he's talking about how his feet are hurting from driving. So he needs someone else to drive so he can rub his feet on the fluffy carpet. Like, these are the biggest problems Wes deals with. You know, his feet hurting from driving and his Reddit haters gadooshing him. And then he has the audacity to talk about how everybody else is getting too soft. I mean, this guy just gets triggered by everything. Like, recently he had a meltdown over some balloon filter on Instagram. You know, first it was the leaf blower, and now it's balloons he's getting triggered by. It's hilarious. But apparently this is how an alpha male is supposed to act, and you can learn how to be like this for only $6,000 a month.
When you inspire them, when you give them a workable path that will change these balloons. Damn it! I hate that shit. When you give someone a workable path, this is the most sought after spot to live in Miami, besides like Star Island and maybe Hibiscus or Palm. But there's Star Island, there's Hibiscus and Palm Island, and then there's San Marco, San Marino, Delito, and Riva Alto. Fuck these fucking balloons. How the fuck do you turn that shit off, and who the fuck designed that shit so we could put their head under my foot real quick?
Yeah, so Wes gets triggered by a lot, and it's always hilarious. I mean, ironically, he might be one of the funniest people on the internet, and he's just the best to troll. Like, he makes it so easy. I mean, this Reddit user messaged him a month ago about his course, and he's just messing with him. He's like, how long until I start renting escorts and yelling at people on Instagram and flipping out at leaf blowers? So then Wes got all pissed, and he's like, oh, you're just one of those haters from Reddit. But apparently he didn't block the guy, so he messaged him again. You know, the same guy on the same phone number messaged Wes, and he's like, I'm interested in your coaching. Can you let me know the details? And Wes fell for it again. He's like, what's up, bro? What's your main focus? And he's like, basically, I'm 5'5", 240, and I eat cupcakes and chips all day, and I beat my stick 8 times a day and do some other disgusting stuff. And Wes is like, are you messing with me, or do you really do that last part? Don't waste my time. And he said, I really do it. So then Wes sent him a rundown of his course. And the guy's like, all right, I'll do 12 months for $40,000. He's like, great, you need it. He's like, first I have a couple questions. Do I need a leaf blower? Do I run escorts? Do I run supercars? Do I run a mansion? Do I beef with Reddit users all day? And then Wes responded and said, I knew you were a troll. And it's like, yeah, he already did the same exact thing to you. And if you knew he's a troll, then why are you wasting your time with him? And then the guy just responded with a leaf blower. And Wes is like, you're a weirdo, I'm blocking you now. Yeah, so it's getting tough out there for Wes. And recently he's really disappointed because originally he thought one of his haters was going to finally pull up at the gym in person, but they didn't show up, and he's really disappointed because he said he's looking forward to getting a BJ from them.
Kind of sucks. I heard some fictional stories online that one of these guys was going to show up here on Saturday at 8 a.m. and nobody's here. I was going to get a BJ before Arm Day, but now I just got to go hit arms. Thought it was going to be baby Arm Day.
Yeah, so I think he might be starting his prison a little bit. I mean, the way he talks about it, it's like he enjoyed his time in there. You know, he kind of brags about it. Like, he'll talk about embarrassing shit he did in there, like shoving stuff up his ass. And he'll act like it's something to be proud of because, I mean, people will question his stories, and some people didn't believe that he actually hooped his paperwork because other people who have been to prison said there's just no reason to do that. Like, it's not necessary. And then also, they just don't think it's possible. Like, it's way too big. But Wes, it's crazy. He's like, no, I didn't. Trust me. You know, he's trying to convince people that he shoved a bunch of paper up his ass for no reason.
No, he didn't believe that you hooped your paperwork. A lot of people have kind of made a meme out of it.
Oh, dude, you wrap it up this big. Like, you get like a 128G, and you get copies of your 128G, which is your paperwork. You fold it over so many times, it's this big. Look at it. It's this big. You put a glove around it 3 or 4 times. You twist it up, and you shove it up your ass.
And do you just stop thinking about it after a while?
Yeah, then you go to the next place, you shit out, you got your paperwork, and now you don't have to wait for it. And it's this big.
Right.
This one guy was like rolling up a paper like this. How's he gonna put this up his ass? I'm like, dude, are you from Tennessee or what, dog?
And the only reason I think this could be true is because I don't know why you'd want to make up something like this, like why you'd want to tell this embarrassing story that's not even true. But maybe he thinks this is just an alpha move for some reason. And I think Wes might have actually enjoyed hooping his paperwork, because I heard recently in John Bravo's new video, he makes good Wes videos, make sure you check out his channel. He said that he talked to Wes's ex-wife, and she said that Wes likes to get pegged. And then also there's some other old Wes videos where he's talking about some sus behavior in prison. And again, it's like maybe he's making this up, but why would he want to? You know, it's so weird to make this stuff up, but why would he want to? You know, it's so weird to make this stuff up. And it's also weird that he's talking about this in a public park, like with people walking by.
You know they love to see them buttholes. They want you to wink at them the whole nine, so I gotta show them. They want to see. They only know you by your butthole in there. They see my face, and they're like, oh, who are you again? And then I just bend over, I show them the butthole. Oh, Wes Watson, how you doing, bro? What's up? Nice to meet you again. And it's just weird. I don't understand why they like that. I don't know why they would want to do that, but whatever. To each their own, like I've said before. To each their own.
Yeah, so Wes is surprisingly open-minded, and I know he lies about some of his time in prison, but it would be so weird for him to make this stuff up, but I also wouldn't put it past him. And you know, he honestly might just think this makes him look hard somehow, but it just makes him look hard for other men. But let me know what you guys think, and then make sure you check out my Patreon account if you enjoyed this video. There are over 100 exclusive videos on there. I talked about Wes and his breakup with his escort, and the downfall of Fresh and Fit, and also recently Burt Kreischer got roasted by Adam Ray. And there's a ton of other stuff. There's a lot to go through. If you like the channel, make sure you check it out. There'll be a link in the description.
Losing Bravo. Taking C. We lost B.
4 or 5 weeks ago, maybe it was, we did a story about why Laura Loomer was jettisoned from the inner circle of Donald Trump. Rumors were reported that she had filleted Donald Trump. And it's hard to know which part of that is the most disgusting.
I mean, she at very least did that to his ego, so we don't even need to get down to the specifics.
Correct. Correct. I mean, but you're talking about two very odious people. And apparently there had to be an intervention, and who better than to intervene than another odious person? But how would we know this story? Well, a fourth odious person interviewed the third odious person who intervened between two other odious people. I have not been following Milo Yiannopoulos' career since he renounced his gay-hoodedness, and
he's been working with Kanye until they had this kind of divorce in which he made some allegations in the court filing which seemed more legit, that Kanye has been getting copious amounts of nitrous gas?
Nitrous gas from his dentist, who is a dentist to the stars. It's weird. It seems bad. He's been abused by and keeping sort of like chemically dependent on it, seems like.
All that said, Yiannopoulos, the last I heard, had converted his husband into a roommate, and I don't know if this is still the case, but he converted his husband into a roommate so that he could be asexual.
That's what it means to be a minority.
And of course, I think even in this exchange, completely apropos of nothing, he drops in that, like, I, of course, don't have sex anymore. I can barely remember it. I definitely don't have any type of gay sex anymore because I'm obviously not gay anymore. I have converted to just a roommate relationship with my husband. And so with that said, here is Milo Yiannopoulos on with Tim Pool very recently, I guess. Talking about how he removed Laura Loomer from the president's orbit.
Laura Loomer,
why was she brought in?
Of course, completely insane. And Laura was brought on into the campaign by Jason Miller, who is that sort of frog-faced, useless bag of but Jason Miller and Boris Epstein, who's the head of Trump's legal team. These are the two guys who were kind of like, oh yeah, Laura Loomer, maybe Laura Loomer. And so she gets on the plane, and then Laura Loomer
Pause it. Pause it. Now, I guess Milo was the one who sort of like helped nurture Laura Loomer back in the day. Laura Loomer also went on to chain herself to Twitter like several years ago when she felt like she was being banned from it or either shadow banned. And this is clipped by Yiannopoulos himself, as far as I can tell. So just go.
Maybe Laura Loomer. And so she gets on the plane, and then Laura Loomer claims to a bunch of people in Palm Beach, all of her friends around in Miami, that she had performed
Family friendly.
Huh?
Family
Monica
friendly.
Lewinsky.
I was going to say a sex act.
There you go.
She alleged this. She alleged to people she was spreading those.
I love you and I try to take care of you. And do you know how difficult it is for me to talk like this on your show? Do you know? Do you know how hard this is?
I'm members only show.
Yeah, I'll say we'll go off. Or whatever it is. I can't. You know, it's been so long since I had sex. I did it the wrong way. I did it like that. It's just completely wrong. So
Pause it. And I love the credulity of everyone there. They all like, I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Yeah, right. Of course, you have not had any sex because you've sworn off sex because your husband's now your roommate. Right. Of course. Uh-huh. Right. No, I get it. I get it.
Mom! Why did you do that to me?
Good.
Way. I did it like that. It's just completely wrong. No, she claimed that she had performed a sex act on the president to a lot of her friends. And this, I was like, okay, all right, okay. So I got a call from somebody, and they said, we need to get rid of her. The president wants to get rid of her, but he doesn't want to be the one to do it because she's crazy. So we don't want her turning on the president because so many people follow, she's so many followers and everything. So my job was to bring things about Laura to light that made her ineligible to, be on the plane and around the president's circle. So, for instance,
pause it. Now, this also, I don't want this to slide by here. This is fascinating that he's given this job. Like, who paid him? Who was it?
He's like a Roger Stone figure.
Yeah, like, this is the thing is, like, I don't think we have this. Certainly not in our media. Like, we don't have, this is like what Posobiec was paid by Cernovich to dig up my tweets. Cernovich would pay Posobiec to do all this type of, stuff back in the day, and then they sort of graduate up to other positions where they start hiring other people, but who's funding them?
Remember that Semaphore article about how right when Kamala became the nominee, they were trying to recruit these low-level influencers to basically come up with...
Well, they weren't being recruited. They were on the Semaphore article. They were on a Zoom with people who presumably were in this network getting offered 5, 10, 20 grand to put out stuff saying that Harris was a slut, and that's the one that George Santos didn't want to be in there. So this operation, whatever this is existing, and then they come in and fund it. Like, whose job was, who gave Milo this job? And I don't know if he means I didn't get paid to do it, or I just was assigned this idea. Who? This is the story that we don't have access to. And it's, I don't know, it just lays there, dormant. Good.
On the plane and around the president's circle. So, for instance, she's not Jewish. She made it up. A friend of mine was there when she did it. She ordered a Star of David necklace off the internet so that she could be ruder about Jews in on stage at a rally.
Laura Loomer isn't Jewish?
She's not Jewish. She's the only person in history.
Wait, so she's
the only person in history. I submitted her for the Guinness Book of Records because she's the only person in history who's ever had a nose job to look more Jewish. It's the most amazing thing you've ever heard in your life. But I also
I've never heard that about her before.
No, but she's not actually Jewish. When she
even ran for Congress, and that never came up.
Right. When she was because I was her communications director.
Maybe not a creature. Sorry. It sounds like things went sour with Laura, and you guys have a lot of bad blood, and you sank her as a result of that. Am I reading this right?
People do pay a lot of money to clean up their own messes. I'm just realizing this now.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Laura is when Laura was going to give a talk.
Pause it again. So he's being paid. Who is paying him? Who is paying him to take out Laura Loomer? How is this an industry amongst them? It's fascinating. It's fascinating. And there's no,
the interesting question for Tim to ask. On whose behalf?
Well, Tim probably knows. I mean, Tim doesn't know specifically, but again, my whole, and maybe we'll go back over this part of it later, but I pressed Tim on this license deal that he had with Tenet. And, like, why weren't you shocked that you were getting paid this amount of money? And he's like, it's like business. Like, we do this amount of revenue. Like, I understand. This was a new show, though. And then he claimed I had three other offers on the table. And this was a year and a half ago. And apparently those 3 other offers never went away. They just stayed there. I mean, he was very cagey about that whole thing.
He's not going to ask because they're all subsidized to some degree, from the grimiest of the grimy to Milo Yiannopoulos to guys that are more front-facing like Tim Pool. They're subsidized to some degree.
You can't be listening to this story and not like go, hey, what? Particularly if you do what we do, unless it's like, oh yeah, that's part of the course. That doesn't even stand out in what he's saying. Go ahead.
Anyway, so Laura is when Laura's going to give a talk to the Republican Jewish Palm Beach Coalition, or whatever it is. She drew what she thought was a Star of David on the folder she was holding her speech in, the speech I'd just written for her, except it wasn't a Star of David, it was a pentagram. Laura, darling, can I have that folder back? And she's like, why? I'm on the way out. I got a speech to go. I said, yeah, I know you got a speech to go. I just wrote it. Can I just what? And I said, well, you've written it. She's like, yes, it's a star. It's Jewish. It must be Jewish. That's a pentagram. I said, what do you mean it's a pentagram? I said, well, that's the Satanism thing. That's 5 stars. The Jewish star has 6 stars. And I had to draw on a whiteboard the difference and ask her to copy it, and she couldn't. Copy it.
Wow. Because there's no difference.
But you couldn't copy it, so you shouldn't do it. So this is the first clue. This is the first clue I had something wrong. Anyway, then the second thing that I released was that, in addition to her
That's what sank her among Trump?
No, her kind of a Jewish. What really sank her among Trump is he hates plastic surgery, and he wondered why she looked so weird. And when I told them it's because she'd had so many procedures,
I don't believe a word he's saying.
Like a bit repulsed by plastic surgery. That's the real thing that sunk her. But the other thing that I did that made her, that expelled her from the circle, to the great applause and thanks of the campaign and her whole family, was that I revealed the real reason she can't own a gun. So Laura Loomis says that she can't own a gun or have a open carry license in California because the FBI is targeting her for being a conservative. But I have a letter from them, which I acquired, which in fact says it's because her own father had her committed in what we in California call a 5150, a forcible psych hold, twice. And that's why she's not allowed to own a gun, because she's mental. And so the headline was, why can't Laura Loomer own a gun? I asked the FBI, comma, and her dad, Jeff. And I got her dad to, like, I flipped her dad.
Somebody just asked, was it snowing in that podcast studio? No, when I hear someone who's got that level of sort of like dry mouth, I suspect something that is a little bit more prescriptive. Anyways, but that's secondary. I mean, it's interesting to hear about, I think like the stuff aside from like all the sort of like gossip and stuff like that. The Loomer using I'm a conservative or I'm a Jew as some type of shield for her behavior is classic amongst these people.
And I'll just say, per her Wikipedia, there are 2 sources cited. Times of Israel's one, I can't remember what the other, but that just take that as face value and repeat it that she is in fact Jewish. So there's some question
I've never
on that.
Questioned it, but now I guess, Milo.
And I don't take Milo at, 100% face value,
No.
I'll just say.
I mean, but he is right that she did completely restructure her face. People can look up those before and after pictures. I mean, it's very catty of him, which, he's... But I care a little bit more about the Trump stuff. That salaciousness is more interesting to me.
Well, I mean, that had been reported about his, about the he doesn't like the, whatever it is, the you know, plastic surgery. Although I find it hard to believe that he hasn't gotten plastic surgery. But
and hair plugs, yes.
I just don't like it on other people. But the really relevant parts here to me are that there's money out there for Yiannopoulos to take out Loomer. Which Tim Pool does not seem to in any way be remotely surprised by.
Let's see what you're made of.
And the way that they all use identity as some type of shield at different times. Like, now Yiannopoulos apparently says that I think he found God. Is that why he converted his husband into a roommate? Yeah. Through some type of religious.
Found God? Found God in a rolled up dollar bill.
I mean, who knows? But the fact of the matter is, I mean, this is what's going on with them, and they are unleashed now. It is a field day, and they will start to climb all over each other. This is the one upshot about this. They're all going to be scrambling for power, and they're all going to be taking each other out. And we're going to be here to document it. But really, the real question is, and I will say this, look, if you work for any of the people that we have just talked about,
I need eyes
and
overhead.
I know that there are people who work for the people we just talked about, I'm not going to say who watch this show. In fact, part of their job is to watch it when we talk about certain people. Send us an email. Go get a burner account if you have to, but send us an email and fill us in as to how much you know about who may have paid them. At majorityreporters@gmail.com.
Sector established.
Let's fire up the phone machine, shall we?
Adler marking care package LZ.
Now this isn't blackmail stuff because there's not enough shame around any of this.
No, we're looking for operational information.
No. I'm talking like nobody's going to get blackmailed with more rumor information. People are saying like, is the administration compromised? There's so much stuff like this. Hey folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take...
approach to this when talking about it is purely pragmatic, and I'm trying to be realistic. I think our goals are aligned in that we want peace, a lasting peace, far away. There are certain starting points that we need to come from to be on before expanding out from there. One of them is if you don't believe in a two-state solution.
I used to be in a two-state solution. I was an advocate for a two-state solution, and I think there are a lot of other people who also used to be two-state solutioners themselves that have changed their perspective dramatically over the course of the past couple of decades. And the rapid expansion slogans. I think Hobby Shalom is another person that I can immediately call. He is a Iraqi Jew, famous historians.
First of all, I guess I'll say this. When talking about the solution, I'll agree that there cannot be a meaningful negotiation here without basically fully dismantling the settlements. And I would even be in favor of offering restitution to the Palestinians that were evicted. That's a big ask, obviously. I do believe that that is
What's your target ID?
Is constantly and maliciously being harassed online for being a diamond. You think you can do that? Then you decide.
Okay, so why I wanted to pause there is because Ethan's talking about how he wants a two-state solution, and this is going to be something that we see a lot in this conversation. Ethan says he wants a two-state solution because it's going to be easier than a one-state solution. Why is it going to be easier? Because in a two-state solution, Israel gets to keep its ethnic supermajority. They get to remain an ethno-state. That's like what Ethan's talking about here. And then he says that, well, to get that two-state solution. So Ethan's a liberal, right? He doesn't want people to get genocided. Big props for Ethan there, like bare minimum, right? I am against genocide. Wow, great. But he wants to maintain the power structures that created that genocide, namely a colonial apartheid state. And he says that he doesn't want the colonial aspect to it. But he wants the apartheid state to remain the same. He wants the apartheid state to remain there. He says that we have to get rid of the settlements in the West Bank and any settlements that are in Gaza. Like there were settlements in Gaza, they took them out. We have to get rid of the settlements in the West Bank because that's a sticking point in the creation of a two-state solution. Okay, well, getting rid of that is going to displace a lot of people. It will cause violence and then even and I'm even in favor of basically reparations to Palestinians who lost their homes. It's like, that's a big ass. Getting rid of the settlers, giving those reparations, that's a big ass. But we need to do all of that, which essentially will be like a violent excavation of people living in the West Bank. Because those people are going to want to do that. So that we can have a two-state solution. So that we can keep that ethnic supermajority, right? But let's just get into it. I just thought it was hilarious when he's like, I'm even in favor of reparations, and that's a big ask. It's like, really, even paying people for like losing their house
Back up, drop care package on my beacon.
I think it also is like logical to do, specifically so that there's like less tension and it's a more violent solution. And last but not least, reparations in this process is also a matter of international law. I guess the only thing that is up for tension is that but also simultaneously is the notion that like actually other Arab states should be giving reparations to the Palestinians. So, like, we shouldn't be bearing the burden of the reparations because it's their fault, because like their position is that
I believe that Netanyahu are one-sided with Hamas. They're both obstructionists and violent lunatics. Starting with all that established, my question to you is this, and again, approaching this from a fully realistic.
So Ethan says that Netanyahu and his cabinet is one side of the same coin with Hamas. Okay, so where is all the smoke for people who support Netanyahu's cabinet when you're criticizing people who are supporting Hamas, right? He's trying to get Hassan banned from Twitch because Hassan has sympathized with terrorist groups, right? He's a terrorist sympathizer, but Ethan's done a video defending the statement that Yoav Gallant is a good guy.
Perspective. What do you think?
Hey, Mingo Lloyd, I mean, I know my chat's doing a good job ripping you a new asshole, but any spot in the world is a bad spot for an ethno-state. So just keep that in mind when you're doing some veiled Islamophobia.
Would happen in the region that would result in Israel conceding to a one-state solution?
Oh, that's a great question. I think one of the greatest things that could happen in a one-state solution is that you completely limit, obviously we're talking about like a hypothetical future that is like very far away, but you completely limit Iran's power and exertion of influence over militant factions that are being currently used as a destabilizing force against Israel. The other states are not all that important, the only reason why I talk about Iran is because Iran is the only regional actor that is like genuinely anti-Israel. They see Israel as an expression of Western influence in the region, and of course they will use, like they have Hezbollah, another...
Let's continue this.
Iranian movement that became a political party as well.
Yeah, maybe time out
Lebanon as well in the civil war. And these are all opportunities for Iran to push back by way of Syria, by way of Iraq, by way of Lebanon, by way of the Houthis in Yemen. They would not be able to utilize these militant factions if there was a permanent peace solution.
So I guess I'll ask the question again because I'm not sure if it was answered directly. But what do you think could happen in the region that would result in a one-state solution?
I think that the normalization agreements would continue with the Gulf nation states, and that Iran's influence over militant factions within Palestinian forces would wither away because there would be no necessity for their continued violent emancipatory efforts.
You're saying that continued normalization of relationship between Israel and neighboring countries.
Yeah, that was already, a lot of the neighboring countries are already like, they're basically, the economy would not exist without America's like tremendous amount of help. Like we give Israel a lot of money, we talk about that all the time, but we give Egypt even more money than that, right? Like, so Egypt is a great example of this. The UAE and Saudi Arabia, again, regional actors that have their own personal interest in the matter, but like they're not interested in.
Yeah, so essentially what Hassan is saying is just treat Palestinians as real people and treat Arab countries as real people. Don't try to fucking invade them. basically don't be like an unhinged imperialist state like what Israel currently is right now. That's essentially what it's saying. And Ethan does this. Yeah, Ethan's just not listening. And this is why I say that Ethan hides himself in ignorance. He uses ignorance as a tool. He will say that a two-state solution is extremely hard to do, right? We got to get rid of the settlers. We need to give Palestinians reparations. That's a really hard thing to do. But then he'll also say, well, one-state solution is really hard to do too, because there's no way that we can get relations normalized between Israel and Palestinians and Israel and like the people that are around them. It's like, okay, Ethan, if the point of you coming on and talking with Hassan is to say a one-state solution is impossible to have and a two-state solution is impossible to have, then what are you advocating for? Like, you're not saying anything. And he's doing this effectively because he is a liberal, and he's like, yeah, I just think that like advocating against Israel is anti-Semitic in general, so we should just kind of like cool it. It's like that line from, yeah, it's that line from American Psycho where he's like, cool it with the anti-Semitism, bro. It's like that. That's basically what Ethan's doing. Hey, cool it with the anti-Semitism.
They are absolutely America's solid allies in the region too. So most of those countries are pretty much designed in a way, like if we're talking about Jordan, directly designed with European influence. Again, another country that's like a holdover state, basically. These are all countries that will go along with whatever America's interests are, as long as America can reinforce its hegemonic power in the region and genuinely is interested in developing new relationships with regional powers. What's your concern? Let me ask that, because I think...
I mean, with like Syria, Lebanon, Iran, I believe that this idea that there would be full acceptance of their countries, of the existence of Israel is pretty... idealistic. You know what I mean? Cool it with the...
Oh, you're saying that you're worried that Lebanon and Syria and other regional actors that are backed by Iran, Yemen being another one, the Houthis.
All right, let's... Is this gonna play?
Cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks.
Cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks. That's Ethan's advocacy against people that are being pro-Palestinian.
I know what you're here for.
Cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks.
Nice. We're pulling ahead.
Would not accept an Israeli state if Palestinians were absorbed into it, and would be a singular state with Palestinians.
But it's not that. There would need to be some meaningful and, I mean, something we've never seen happen in that region ever before Israel would say, okay, we're going to dissolve our state. My concern is that people that say they want a one state are basically in a non-starter conversation. It's unproductive, almost. I find it so unlikely. The other issue is like, so...
Real quick before we move on from that. So there already is a one state. Like, the way I see it, the actual legitimate reason as to why I don't believe in a two-state solution any longer is because there is a one state, right? And that one state is an apartheid state. It's a constant Israeli occupation of the West Bank and constant control of the Gaza as well. There's a possible failure for Israeli security, obviously. You and I agree on that. But my solution, basically, when I say I want a one state, is first and foremost a moral one, because I do want the end to the apartheid, so that Palestinians can have recognition, they can continue a life of dignity, have autonomy, and participate in a secular democratic process. But the alternative is, the way I see it is like, is it a one state that is an apartheid, or is it a one state that doesn't have an apartheid? I don't care what it's called. I have no interest in discussing that. I care more about like human beings that live there.
You know, it's like this idea that we're normalizing relationships. It's like, when can that ever happen? Because if we're going to have a conversation like right now about the best path forward to peace for both groups, that just doesn't seem like... And here's another aspect. If you were to basically remove the all the checkpoints and...
Like Ethan just basically, when he's like, so what is, when you know, if there was a one-state solution, what's, you know, what will happen in the region? He basically, like, what does he expect? He's like, Hassan just gonna be like, oh yeah, all the Jews are gonna die, and then basically all the Jews in the world will die after that, because there'll be no way to protect them. It's like, what does he want Hassan to say? That's what he's digging for. And if he thinks he's gonna say that, he's a fucking idiot. Because that's a psychotic thing to think. It's gonna be hard work. Yes, there are going to be people who like, we should just murder every Jew, and then there's people who are going to be like, you shouldn't do that because it's horrible, because it's horrifying. and it's not necessary. You can have peace. Peace is possible. But whatever. Ethan wants it both ways. He wants to be perceived as being against the genocide, but at the same time, he'll fight to the death to defend the existence, the right for Israel to exist. But he does. I don't think he really has gotten it through his head that like what he means is like to exist as an ethno-state, a Jewish ethno-state. It doesn't have to be a Jewish ethno-state. It could be a place where Jews can be safe. It can 100% be that. But it doesn't have to be an ethno-state to be that. And in fact, one can make a very strong argument that creating an ethno-state and sustaining that ethno-state through violence endangers Jews around the world. And to think that Jews in Israel are safe is absurd. Thank you.
And walls and barriers and blockades and all that stuff. Do you? And again, I'm not saying
any unsafety that's going on is in the control of the Israeli state.
Sweet dreams.
He's so worried about the conditions of peace, or the conditions of, you know,
right or wrong. From a very pragmatic perspective, do you think there will be more or less violence against Israel?
There's more or less violence.
So this is Ethan essentially running defense for Israel's ethno-state. So he's saying that, oh well, if we added Palestine into Israel, would it still be called Israel? Like, do you want Israel to go? And Hassan's like, I don't care. I just think that we should have equal rights to everyone in the region. And Ethan will try this another way. Well, if we stopped oppressing Palestinians, would we get more violence against Israelis? And Hassan's like, well, yeah, you would. I mean, you're getting violence already, and you are.
Why there won't be violence against Israelis is because they have a shit ton of weaponry already.
I'm just gonna fast forward this a little bit.
Palestinians don't even have a fucking army. What's he talking about?
Let's go here.
That stuff. Do you? And again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just coming at it from a very pragmatic perspective. Do you think there'll be more or less violence against Israel?
Wait, I'm sorry. In a one-state solution, do you think there's more or less violence against Israelis? Is that what you said?
I mean, that's not exactly what I said, but it's close enough.
I think the grand scheme of things, it would be less. Where am I coming from this? Why am I saying this? Well, because there are good examples of one state obviously no longer existing when we look at South Africa, as a matter of fact. But also, on top of that, one thing I want to go back to.
Yeah, I like that idea, as in just call it Israel and Palestine.
So you said like Israel's allies or Israel's like regional enemies are they constitute a threat, right? So they still currently constitute a threat.
Gearing up for a final push. Hope you left someone to take.
If we were to lift the blockade and the wall around Gaza today, there wouldn't be more violence against Israelis?
I 1000% look to what has happened in the past throughout history.
And I mean, just to comment more on this is extremely reactionary thinking from Ethan Klein here.
100%. Now he's like, why does everyone think I'm a Zionist?
You didn't think
this is why people think you're a Zionist. He's like, well, if we tear the walls down, we're all dead. That's a Zionist position, bro. Peace and love. What the fuck? You can't get that through your fucking dumb as dog shit. You should just fucking shut the fuck up. So
he does not understand where the violence is coming from. As we said before, this unstable system of an ethno-state apartheid is causing resistance groups to resist, and that resistance comes in the form of violence a lot of the times. So Ethan does not understand where violence is coming from. Why do I say this is reactionary thinking? He's not using like political analysis to understand like why people are violent. He is just kind of, if you're not willing to, so if Ethan is not like able to understand that oppression and apartheid causes violence, then where does he think the violence is coming from? Like, where do people, why does he think that people in Palestine are so violent? He apparently can't understand that they're violent because of Israel's violence that they do upon them, and they're like literally resisting an occupying force. He can't understand that, And so the only real alternative is they're just inherently more violent. Or even if we're not going to go that far, they are taught to be more violent, which is basically the same thing as inherently more violent, right? It's the same thing as saying like, what Rudy Giuliani said, where Gila went like, where Rudy said they teach Palestinian kids at 2 years old to hate America and hate Jewish people. Ethan would kind of agree with that too. Like Kilo's going, he's kind of got a point, right? Like they do teach them that. And they're not saying they're inherently more violent, but it's just this culture of violence that they're indoctrinating their kids into. The same thing with anti-black people. Oh, kids grow up like surrounded by drugs. Their fathers aren't in the home. They're taught that they should be in gangs. They don't value school. They're not saying they're like genetically inferior than white people, but it's basically the same thing. They're inherently inferior because of their culture, right? That's what Ethan's doing here. And this is why I say that Ethan actually isn't against apartheid. He likes the apartheid here. He's saying if we got rid of all of these walls and these barriers and the oppression, then Palestinians would do a lot of violence against Israelis. It's like, that's not how it works, buddy. Like, people are violent because of the violence that Israel and we can just look at pretty much every example in history of an oppressor and oppressed people, and then when you got rid of the oppression, the violence dissipates. Like American slavery, apartheid South Africa, you can look at like the oppression of the Irish people in Ireland.
Drop the enemy, Salonka.
Like there's so many examples, and the fact that Ethan's not able to understand that, it is very reactionary. Again, this is just more advice that he believes that Israel should remain an apartheid state. And he will say, but the thing is, like, again, Ethan never makes positive points. He always just says that I'm not saying this, I'm just expressing the ideas and the beliefs of the people that live in Israel.
Hardpoint active.
So he's kind of hiding. But like, effectively, Ethan is saying that, right? If the only things that Ethan says is what Israelis believe, I'm not believing this. This is what Israelis believe. Okay, well, tell us what you believe. You never actually tell us what you believe. You'll just be like, yeah, I don't like settlements. I don't like Netanyahu. I don't like genocide. And never leave it at that. It's like, okay, so you do like the apartheid state. You do like the fact that Palestinians are segregated from Israelis. He doesn't go any further than that, right?
Similar to meetings where there was like a lot of that exploration process often historically led to less violence than the violence of
give me a bloody care package.
I don't know how useful it is to compare it to like other situations because it does have a lot of unique things. For example, I mean the government in charge of the Hamas is
I don't know how useful it is to compare it to other situations. You don't understand, son. Palestinians are uniquely inferior than pretty much every other resistance group. Why are you comparing it to Native Americans? Why are you comparing it to black people? There's no comparisons allowed in this situation.
Destroying Israel and killing Israelis. So how I just don't understand how you can say that removing the wall is a result from West Bank. A lot of Hamas. I know there's a ton of people Palestinians who have to work, but there's also a lot of Hamas. If you're in Israel, okay, we're going to remove our walls.
More liberal, like apartheid shit from Ethan here, where he's saying, well, I know there's a lot of like peace-loving Palestinians, but there's also a lot of Hamas Palestinians. And I mean, he'll when pushed on this, he'll retreat back to, I'm just saying the Israeli perspective, but you know, he's bringing it up on his own accord. He's had these thoughts before. He's expressing these thoughts that he's having. He's not saying, well, Israel would say there's a lot of Hamas, right? He's the one doing it. And essentially what he's saying, well, there's good Palestinians. There's like the perfect victim type of Palestinians, but then there's also the imperfect type of victim Palestinians that have resisted. So if you get rid of oppression, then those guys that were violent in the past because of the oppression are going to be violent again. Just extremely reactionary thinking. And again, Ethan's main issue here is that he's like, we do not have the perfect victim of Palestinians that we can rise up. And whenever you are interviewing like a Yemeni teenager, whenever you are playing Houthi music videos, you are not being the perfect pro-Palestinian voice. Okay, if you are advocating for the American government is genociding, people are always going to criticize you no matter what.
Net call, napalm strike inbound.
Matter of other things.
With the walls and checkpoints, so it's more of a matter of like whether the ceasefires have worked successfully. And usually the ceasefire process is, even though there's red line mass on the Palestinians, it's still relatively successful. But I do think that comparing this to other historical events is important because, I mean, chattel slavery was true. I think 13 years ago, unreasonable, unwarranted genocide was public, where people were looking at their homes, but then the reconstruction process was a similar fear that what if black people that were now newly freed would turn around and treat white people in the same way that we had historically treated them? No, it already occurred in that process. And as a matter of fact, the real violence that came after that was conducted by the KKK, a desperate attempt to restore the racial...
So one thing that Hassan's saying here that I mean, I agree with it, of course, but one thing that I would add, for me personally, I really fucking hated when liberal groups, like specifically the media, because they're the ones that are talking about it, liberal media tries to whitewash resistance groups from the past, like historical resistance groups. So one example that comes to mind, I mean, obviously you can talk about how there were some violent uprisings for slavery. But does that mean that we should free slaves? Does that mean that we should not free slaves? No, it's ridiculous. Obviously, the slavery is the system that caused the violence. It's not that the slaves were inherently inferior and they were just more violent. Same with Palestinians. And then one thing that really pissed me off is I was listening to NPR and they were doing a story on Palestinians resisting against Israel, and they were comparing Palestinians in Israel to Jews in Germany. And then the NPR report says it should be noted though that there was no violence, there was no credible threats of violence that Germany did against Nazis. So there was no reason for the Nazis to oppress them, which is insane. Are you seriously telling me? I mean, first of all, there were violent uprisings that people did to fight back against German oppressors. And not only is that justifying the treatment of Palestinians that Israel is doing right now, whitewashing the past events so that, like, to justify the victims of today's current events, like, they're saying you're not a perfect victim, right? You didn't do what Gandhi did to free India against the British. You just walked in a line and, like, you resisted non-violently, where they beat you with a stick and you just fall down and take it. You didn't do that, so obviously we can't support you now because you were violent. But it also, like, it whitewashes the past, and then it informs us that, like, violent actions are never justified, and that's not true at all. You should definitely, like, violence is definitely a tool when we're talking about self-defense, and some forms of violence, like, is completely valid in political self-defense. You should resist occupying forces, huh? Sorry to say. Hopefully that doesn't get the stream taken down. And then the other thing is that it makes those groups, like, there's a huge push in Israel right now to separate the Israeli identity, like the current Israeli and Jewish identity, from those that died in the Holocaust. So there's actually, like, an extreme amount of resentment of Holocaust survivors for looking weak against the Germans. Why didn't anyone in the Holocaust fight back? That's a huge reason why there's this huge, like, national push to make Israel look strong and tough, and we have attractive women and strong men, and we're going to go fight in the war and come back and sing songs. We're not like those people that just didn't resist at all and died in the Holocaust and looked so weak. We're not even weak Jews. We're the mean, strong Jews that will defend ourselves and kill anyone that even looks at us the wrong way. And it's an erasure of history. It's an erasure of the people that did struggle and did resist against Nazi Germany. So I really don't like it. It's like wrong on so many levels, and that's what we're doing too. Well, in the past, the press groups didn't use violence. They were the perfect victims. Like, we had this romanticized vision of the civil rights movement, anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, of Native Americans. I mean, Native Americans are still fucked in America. But we had this romanticized view of victim, like historic victims. And they were the perfect victim. And at the end of the day, righteousness won out. People saw that they were just as human as the oppressors were, and they, through like civil organizations and activism, political change happened. And the arrow of justice, or the arrow of history, always bends towards justice. Like, these people were not perfect victims. They were humans just like everyone else, and you trying to treat them as perfect victims and separate the victims from our oppressed today is wrong on so many levels.
Weaver authorizing watch kill operation.
Yeah, so now Ethan says that I know there was isolated incidents of violence, but the violence that we see on Palestinians, like the Palestinians do, is systemic. They have a government. Like, again, he's just reaching for excuses here where he can victimize Palestinians. He can oppress them, right? They're not the perfect victims.
Launching attacks on basically, I mean, civilians.
Finish line in sight. Don't let up. Hostile at the hard point.
But then also, hostiles
in your AO.
all peaceful options of civil disobedience. Originally, they chose to oppose the apartheid by engaging in investigation and trying to get the United States to privilege and dismantle the carceral system in South Africa. So that didn't work. Then there was a riot where police opened live fire and killed 60 million. And then after that, there was a shift into more militant resistance against the apartheid, and the violence from the ANC, just like the violence from the IRA in the Troubles, was not only, it wasn't directly against military positions.
Okay, so just a reminder, PSA: practice active listening. Look at the person that you're talking to, so that they know you're listening. Because look at what Ethan's doing. Hassan starts going on this talk about all of these different violent resistance groups that sprung up against occupation and oppression. Ethan just like, I actually wasn't talking about all of those groups. I was talking specifically Black slavery in America.
More militant resistance against the apartheid, and the violence from the ANC, just like the violence from the IRA, was not only, it wasn't directly against American positions.
But the people are not too, I think learning a lot about Israel Palestine. I don't know as much about like the South Africa apartheid. So let's just stay on, I guess, focus on the. I guess to be frank, I don't know what you're saying, so it's not helping me much.
Well, the more exciting that is because you said, like, is there a way? I'm giving you historic examples that aren't that far off. But that is too far off. ANC's actions and activities that put Nelson Mandela on the terrorist watch list until 2008 were against civilian populations as well. They
so listen, I'll concede that it's possible as a result of what happened. That removing the blockade and border checkpoints wouldn't result in immediate violence against them. That's what I believe.
So this is my biggest issue. Ethan will say, in Israel, it's not possible to convince a single Israeli that removing the oppression wouldn't lead to their deaths. Thus, we cannot remove the oppression. And it's like,
not by strength.
What do you think is worse? What do you think is worse? Genociding people so that Israelis can feel comfortable, or making Israelis feel a little uncomfortable so that people cannot die and not like get polio? And this is my biggest issue with Ethan. He will criticize, like, this is why I wanted to watch this video. Ethan will criticize Hassan and he'll criticize other Palestinian voices for not respecting the unfounded feelings that Israelis have. So we've been watching 15 minutes of this video right now. Hassan's basically spent this 15 minutes saying that there are violent resistance groups against Israel, but if we got rid of the oppression, then the violence that the groups that resist against Israel will dissipate. There won't be any more violence. And Ethan will be like, okay, well, I agree with you. Like he'll say, I guess he didn't say that. He says, I understand what you're saying. However, Israelis don't see it that way. Israelis are, let's just say that they're not logical in their fear of Palestinians. And I think Ethan might agree, I don't know, this might be a stretch, but I would hope Ethan agrees with that the fear that he's saying is Israelis have this fear of Palestinians. And I mean, he kind of agreed with Hassan, so I guess he would, if we're following this logic, that would assume a lot. That would assume that Ethan is logical. But if we're going to follow the logic, then he would say that Israelis' fear of Palestinians is illogical. And then he's saying that, like, well, the fear is here. You're advocating here. Let's try to move your advocation for Palestinian rights to meet their fear. It's like, okay, or you can move the fucking Israeli fear and try to have them see Palestinians as real human beings. But instead, Ethan's whole attack is on the Palestinian advocation and trying to make it meet the feelings of Israeli people. And that's just not good political advocacy. Like when you are sacrificing advocation for human rights to try to pander to like the oppression class, that is essentially defending Israel. And then it is also like, it's a little bit defending the genocide.
It's a non-starter. I don't think you'll ever convince Israel to basically dissolve their state and remake it as one state. I just don't think Israel would ever do that, ever.
I don't disagree with you.
It would never happen. The only way that would happen is beside force, which is why I asked in the beginning, what could lead to Israel willingly dissolving its country and creating and agreeing to create a one-state country, short of just annihilating massive amounts of Israelis in an all-out war. I don't see any other.
So he's saying, I don't see any other way. It's like you cannot convince them that it would be in their best interest. And yeah, I just want, right, exactly. Honestly, good point, Mangaloid. Just two-state it until the next war. Like, that's what would happen. If you did a two-state solution, there would just be another war. And that's honestly what Ethan is advocating for, because, again, he is a believer in the apartheid state of Israel. He does essentially just want to kick the can down the road and say, let's have a two-state solution for now. It's the easiest. It's not the easiest, but it allows him to keep his apartheid state that he loves. And let's just like maintain this unstable position that we're living in as Israelis in an apartheid state that does have this expansionist tendency to like literally its constitution.
The way to do it.
No, the way to do that, the enforcement mechanism would be international pressure, but most importantly, the number one most important party at play here, the United States of America. Now, the reason why I talked about the ANC or South African apartheid is because Israel and South Africa were allies in that same time frame, and they relied on one another quite effectively during the Cold War as well. And also, I personally believe that Israel saw what happened during the South African apartheid and vowed not to repeat those mistakes in order to continue being a ethno-state. A Jewish ethno-state and maintain an apartheid structure in occupied territories. That's the reason why I think it's important to draw this parallel. And it's also important because that's how international pressure worked in that situation. It's a very successful and very recent example of an apartheid regime ending with international pressure, specifically with American sanctions. What's up?
You think with international pressure, Israel would dissolve their country and create a one state?
With international pressure, Israel would do anything that, not even international pressure.
So again, notice what Ethan said. I mean, I'm a little bit nitpicky here, but he said with international pressure, Israel would dissolve their country and do a one state. So he obviously sees Israel as like definitively an ethno state. If you change the ethno state status of Israel, you're changing Israel. It's no longer Israel. It's unrecognizable. And then he argues here with Hassan a little bit about the effects of pressuring Israel has. It's kind of a tangent, so I'm going to skip over that part.
The morality of the situation, you and I both agree. But when we're talking about it in a practical application.
So I'm planning to stream probably about until the next hour, so another 3-4 weeks, probably, if you're just wondering about the time of this.
Concerns that revolve around Israel not wanting to do this and fighting against this.
It will never happen.
I completely completely understand what you're saying. I agree that as it stands currently that the Israeli government would refuse to do this. The Israeli population would not be receptive.
Everybody.
Yeah, the Israeli population would not be receptive to it. Ultimately, it still doesn't change the reality that there would be an ethno state, and there's pressure campaigns that could work from the international community.
You're not going to convince Israel to dissolve their borders. You have to
So just one thing I think is interesting here. Ethan is basically saying that people like Israelis are way more fascist than they are. Like they care about their fascism more than they care about the material conditions. And I just don't think there's any evidence to that. I think he's lying there, and he can say stuff like that where he'll say people will want to be more racist than they care about their money.
Hostile UAV established
he's not
overhead.
living in Israel. So I think that if he was in Israel now, he'd be like, holy shit, this fucking sucks. Like, I think there's a reason we have
the direction that the people actually don't want the government to move in at the behest of the United States. Or even sometimes moving in the direction people don't want it to move in, but then the rapid settlement expansion is something that the office of defense has been very consistent throughout time. The government doesn't really factor into consideration what the broader Israeli society thinks about the matter. They just keep building fucking settlements and populating these areas, right? And the opposite is happening as well. In a time when COVID is really going to kind of institute polling, 80% of the Jewish population believes that there's no need to consider Palestinian lives in the last siege in Gaza. The government has taken steps that we find to be inappropriate in opening up humanitarian corridors so that we can bring supplies. The Prince Minister Yoav Galant was asked the question in the aftermath of the first day of the Rafah border opening so that they could bring in trucks and trucks of supplies into Gaza. They were asked, why are you doing this? To which Yoav Galant responded with, what can I do? America
Enemy
told me I have to do
launch
this.
detected.
In 2021, Joe Biden called up Netanyahu. What's up?
letting your sovereign border.
Of course, it's not a one-to-one comparison at all. I'm simply stating that some
Bro, it's so crazy. Like, I really wish that Hassan would say, what do you mean by dissolving your sovereign border? Because essentially he's saying that Israel...
Hassan's given him way too much ground to walk on.
And I think this is just a fundamental lack of understanding of what a one-state solution would be. Like, Ethan, he straight up does not know. He's saying random stuff like they would dissolve their sovereign border. Hey, there would be one country and would still have a sovereign border. Incorporating people into that country. This happens all the time where nations will change their borders, annex new things. Ironically, Ethan criticizes Hassan for not like condemning Russia's annexation of Crimea, but that would essentially be a huge improvement if Israel annexed Palestine and they annexed the West Bank and didn't kill everyone.
I'll give you the benefit
that would be a
of the
huge
doubt.
improvement than what they're doing right now.
Something that all to ending a siege is entirely up to the United States and what the United States
What pressure would the United States exert over Israel that would be so powerful that they would say we have to dissolve our country?
First of all, I don't think that this would be
dissolving the country. Stupid. Let's see how it's
Israel as a nation state
Hassan
would simply
reacts.
allow also a part of the democratic process. It also would not happen overnight either. But if you're asking me the question, it's sanctions. It's the shutting off the money faucets, shutting off bombs. You were watching the stream earlier, so you probably saw this already. But like, we shipped 2 different naval Iron Dome trucks into Israel. We are consistently shipping in Mark 84 rockets into Israel so that they can directly use this on the offensive line. This is not even a defensive weapon that they have. This is specifically so they can engage in offensive on the Gaza Strip. So without American involvement, Israel would not be able to America could just as easily tomorrow with one phone call call the Netanyahu and say, the Biden has done this in 2021, Reagan's done this in the past, Bush has done this,
America's top selling Israel bombs, then they will I say dissolve it. Again, that's how the people in Israel are going to do this. It won't be the same place, for them and to them, their security is real now.
Yeah, and why would it not be the same place? Because you're letting Palestinians in, right? So again, there's more reactionary thinking from Ethan, saying that if you give Palestinians equal rights with Israelis and you stop oppressing them and you stop segregating them, then the country will be in a different place. This is like Ethan's the same guy that says that Israel's full of Middle Eastern people, they're full of Arab people, there's Arab Jews, they have a huge Arab culture in Israel. So if you're saying that Israel is anti-Arab, you're racist. Okay, so if Israel is so Arab and it's such a melting pot of different cultures and stuff, then why is allowing Palestinians into Israel and giving them equal rights as Israeli, like Jewish Israelis, why is that fundamentally changing Israel? And what I fucking hate about what Ethan's doing is he'll say, I'm not saying this is right. This is just what Israeli Jews are saying. Okay, well, are you saying they're wrong then? Why are you talking about why are you giving any credence to this pretty racist statement that Israeli Jews are saying? So Ethan will be like, this is what Israeli Jews are saying. And he'll say something racist. And then I really wish Hassan was talking to you and would say, okay, well, do you think that? Like, what do you think, Ethan? Because if you think that what the Israeli Jews are saying is wrong, maybe we should try to change their minds on this, because that is a pretty racist and that is the kind of belief that leads to genocide happening. If you are saying that Palestinians having equal rights with you and assimilating into your country is fundamentally changing the country you live in, that's pretty racist. And what do you think? Maybe you should use your leverage. Maybe you should use your platform where you do have a connection to Israel. Maybe you should use that to try to change people's opinions and educate people.
You don't think that Israel could get bombs from other places?
Certainly, but Israel is our ally, and Israel relies a tremendous amount on U.S. aid, right? To the tune of $4 billion, but also Israel engages in a lot of trade. For example, in 2013, Israel was offering weapon schematics, U.S. weapons to China. America stopped that, right? So Israel does have global partnerships, but many of those global partnerships are still...
I mean, the United States gave Israel $17.9 billion in the past year. So... yeah, when we're talking about, Israel could just go to Russia to get that kind of equipment. Yeah, that's bullshit. Israel's going to do what America says Israel's going to do. So I don't know. This part where Ethan's like, well, America has no control over Israel, so there's no way that we can change the minds of Israel to do a one-state solution. It's pretty much just whining. And it's also just deflecting from the topic at hand, which... should a one-state solution happen? He's unwilling to deal with the idea of a one-state solution. So what is he doing? He's saying, well, that's impossible to happen. America doesn't have enough leverage over Israel to force them to do a one-state solution. Israel could go do something else.
Right? Because it's so invasive. The surveillance technology, and yet America also uses Pegasus. So it's more so, it's almost always this hey guys, don't do that, and finger wagging publicly while simultaneously helping Israel continue doing whatever it's doing, because it's
America's influence over Israel is great, but
I think it's absolute.
I mean, Israel was fighting to defend itself before America gave a fuck about the region. So I genuinely think that it will never happen. Even if America was like, I'm cutting your aid, this relationship is over unless you open the borders and create this new state.
I think before America, it was the British. Before America, I think it was the British. And
after the British were gone, after the Palestinian Mandate, and the British said, fuck this, I don't deal with this shit. The Jews were fighting to defend themselves and their new place in that area from the very beginning with no help from anybody.
That's not true. They were shipping in weapons. Even under British occupation, they were still shipping in weapons illicitly.
After British occupation. I'm talking about 1948. Who was supporting Israel in 1948?
So the Haganah, Irgun, and Lehi brigades that were at that point...
It's irrelevant. Who cares who's helping Israel in 1948? Now America helps Israel. Now Israel relies on America for all of its support. This is such a stupid conversation. And again, Ethan is pretty much just having this conversation to avoid the fact that it is not only the morally just thing to do, but it's... the utilitarian best thing, it's the easiest option to try to end the amount of death by having a one-state solution. And Ethan's just completely ignoring it to have this irrelevant conversation of who supported Israel in 1948. And then he goes on to this topic of well, Egypt had a powerful military in 1948, and so Israel defended against that. Isn't that cool? Bro, who gives a fuck? That was 80 years ago.
I do not think that they were a really good standing army at all. I think that the overarching... I don't know if you're talking about 1948 or if you're talking about
Yeah, now they're talking about Egypt. I'm skipping past it.
They're fucking crazy, dude. They will, and they do believe that dissolving the borders would be a second genocide. They believe that. All of them. Almost all of them.
Please, Hassan, just ask Ethan. I don't care what they believe. People can be wrong on this. What do you believe? Do you think they're right when they say that? Like ultimately.
I mean, yeah, Hassan is being way too charitable, trying way too hard to not upset him, and he should just be like direct.
This conversation is dumb. If the conversation is only going to consist of Ethan saying what Israelis believe, it is irrelevant what Israelis believe right now. What is the relevant thing right now? Stopping the genocide. That's the only thing that's relevant. And so, I mean, when Ethan's saying, if you call people Zionists, like, some people consider themselves Zionists, but they're against the genocide, that's hurting their feelings. If you're pushing them Zionists, then that can hurt the feelings of people that are sensibly on your side, even though they're against genocide. It's like, Ethan, right now that doesn't matter. The people in Israel that are pushing against genocide have no power whatsoever. They are genuinely that want to see believe Palestinians have human rights, and they believe Palestinians are equal to that. They have no power right now. I'm sorry, like, they're fighting a good fight, but they are irrelevant right now. What matters is trying to get America to stop funding Israel. Like, if America didn't exist, Israel would stop its genocide. It would have stopped its genocide like months ago. America just like last week vetoed a vote calling for a mandatory ceasefire in the UN.
And so you have to reckon with this reality. Like, with the one state.
And so when Ethan says Hassan needs to reckon with the reality that Israelis, the Jewish Israelis, like their apartheid state. Hassan, you're not reckoning with the idea that Jewish Israelis enjoy apartheid. Okay. Who gives a fuck? It doesn't matter. Like, we can deal with that later. We can deal with that when the genocide is over. Okay, how about that? We can deal with it then. Right now, it's irrelevant. And then the other thing is, if we're talking about we need to reckon with people that love apartheid, Ethan, that's something that you can do. You can push against genocide and like educate people on why apartheid is bad. But instead, you're just saying this is what people think. You got to deal with that. You got to deal with, like, it doesn't cross Ethan's mind that you shouldn't be allowed to change people's minds.
Not gonna happen overnight. It's not like, all right, everybody, like, it's a one state now. Like, that's not how this works, right? But a international commitment in the exact opposite direction has to happen, and it has not happened so far.
Like, do you ever even think that's possible before we can even get to the idea that we need to exert pressure on Israel and foreign forces?
I think that there's a reason why there is a flow of propaganda into the Western world that the Israelis want to speak there a lot, because they want to maintain a posture that is broadly supported by the Western world. And I think that thing has been breaking since 2021 is that also all officially declared Israel to be an apartheid state. In my opinion, it was decades late, but yes, over time, as the brutality of this regime continues to get worse and worse, more and more people will, in my opinion, continue to protest these sanctions and will push to get Western leadership to pull support away and ultimately even move in the direction of sanctions. This kind of I'm not entirely. I don't know how long this will take, but stop waiting for it.
Doesn't go on that long,
We've given up the lead.
I mean, the inverse of this is also a really long time. It revolves around Israel continuing to like slowly but surely the West Bank, to record arms the way they've been doing, and continue to push thousands of West Bank further and further away, with the ultimate goal of like maintaining like ethnic cleansing, especially containing parts of Gaza, maybe even annex further and further. Because like everybody understands that there's no way to like to eradicate not just Hamas, but like the means of violent resistance against Hamas, right? So if it's not Hamas, it's Hamas too, right? Hamas in itself was not a real entity that was even remotely popular in its dimension. Even away from charity group, it is a charity group that like literally was getting funding from Israel as well to an actual militant group in 1988. So then that switched over to start using suicide bombs on civilian targets in the aftermath of 1994.
The one thing I learned about Hamas, because it's easy to look at Israel and look at all the obstructionists. I mean, it was Rabin that was executed, right? By a fucking psychotic. And they were so close. They were so close to peace. But Hamas actually rose to prominence in opposition to the PLO peace. That is why.
I mean, that's what exposes Ethan as like an ultra Zionist. It's his fixation on Hamas. And like how that like derails every conversation. Hamas. It's like, bro, the right wing of Israel put Hamas into power. to split to divide the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. You need to stop fucking. You need to stop fixating on Hamas, bro. That's what the media does. That's just the easy excuse for like imperialism for the bad guys. It's like, well, Hamas, and then you're gonna cry and scream all day about Hamas, about how they're like irreconcilably horrible, pure evil, cannot be reckoned with. It must be fucking annihilated.
Hold the line, Crimson. This is ours to lose.
You can't expect to have that position and people not call you a Zionist, bro. That is the essence of Zionism. This idea that like if we give any quarter, to these the Palestinians, and if we let them return to the places we stole from them, then we're gonna die. That's Zionism, bro. And, or at least like the idea that like, well, I need to maintain a state, a military nation, if you will, ethno-state, preserve that. It's all fantasy, bro. It's all dog shit from the beginning. From the very fucking beginning. The state of Israel has been dog shit. The United States should have taken in the Holocaust victims. Period. They shouldn't have been like, they shouldn't have had to go to Israel, which was they shouldn't have been like forced to go to Palestine, someone else's place, because they're kicked out of their homes. So now they're going to move to a place where they're moving. People have been kicked out of that home. It doesn't make, dude. The United States, Europe, everyone should have taken in Germany. This should have been after the end of the war. Germany should have been safe for Jewish people after the overthrow of Nazi Germany. And the idea that they like have to go to this colonial state where all the land has been taken from Palestinians. It's absurd.
Why they came out is literally to derail the peace talks.
So
and they went out
you're right. You're absolutely right.
They went out and they started suicide bombing cafes and buses on a weekly basis, a daily basis, and they were successful, frankly. So Hamas, from their inception, has their singular goal is to not have peace, but to basically there's no compromise for them. It's only kill everybody there, remove them all. You know what I mean?
So let me explain this to you. This is actually, we are very close to having the exact same understanding of the situation. The reason why I brought up Hamas and its founding charter in 1988, which is like expel all the Jews, like kill all the Jews, or whatever the fuck they said, like the radical violent shit that they said in their founding charter, is because Hamas, out of all of the militant factions that some were violently resisting against Israeli occupation, some of which were actually interested in a peaceful solution, like the one that you just mentioned with Yitzhak Rabin, the PLO, Yasser Arafat, the official recognition that that there was a peace negotiation that would finally feature Palestinian voice at the table, changed a lot.
I'm gonna skip a little bit.
However,
well, yeah.
Looking at now.
I mean, basically, it's just Ethan saying that we cannot have a one-state solution because Hamas exists, and Hamas is fundamentally opposed to peace with Israel. And yeah, I mean, again, Hamas is fundamentally opposed with peace to Israel because Israel is occupying them. If you're going to do like, you're basically just going to resist against that. But if you get rid of the occupation and you offer the citizens like a better pathway forward, then Hamas is going to dissolve. There's going to be no need for it anymore.
Now, I'm just being real. Like, you have to see how impossible it is. It's just a non-starter. It's just a non-starter with Israel. It will just never, ever happen. Another question I have to ask you, I guess, going along is like, do you think a lasting peace is possible while Hamas is in power?
I think that in order for Hamas to actually be dealt with appropriately and for it to no longer exist, the major goal of Hamas needs to be eviscerated, which is a secular democratic republic would completely destroy any kind of legitimate need for violent emancipation. It's over at that point. Without the apartheid, there's no reason for any of this to exist.
You're saying if they lift the blockade, Hamas will just dissolve.
Hamas in and of itself is already already not a very popular entity, both in Gaza, but I guess ironically a little bit more popular in the West Bank as years have passed by. The only group that is less popular than Hamas in the eyes of Palestinians, however, is the Palestinian Authority. To me, this is Israel's arrogance. The way that the Israeli governments under Netanyahu and under even more peaceful, supposedly more dovish leadership like even Ehud Barak, the Palestinian Authority has always been used as a part of the Israeli security apparatus. The Palestinian Authority collaborates with the Israeli government. They actually give up resistance members. They literally give up random Palestinians to the Israeli government so they can be unlawfully detained. This, of course, has created in the minds of Palestinians a anger towards like the one group that is supposed to be collaborating with Israel. Israel had every opportunity throughout this time frame to show that the secular Fatah party was actually not simply a cutout that is simply there to oppress Palestinians, but with a Palestinian face, but instead like offered genuine security assurances, genuine security commitments, and a good faith interest in like not continuously expanding in the West Bank. But they didn't do that. They did the exact opposite, dangling the two-state solution as a carrot while simultaneously continuing on with their expansive policies in the West Bank.
I don't believe you answered the question. Do you think a lasting peace is possible while Hamas is in power?
Hamas will not be in power if there is lasting peace. That's my point.
Okay. So you're saying, well, no. The lasting peace doesn't come first. First, you have to deal with Hamas.
You cannot deal with Hamas by bombing.
So again, like, okay, Hamas is a name of a group, right? But that group, people will say you can't defeat Hamas by bombing it, and like obviously you can kill people that are in Hamas, but the point of Hamas is to resist against Israel, and as long as Israel is occupying a group of people, there's always going to be resistance groups rising up against
it's
it.
the end of the road for all of us.
They occupied Lebanon,
it's
and
the
there
end
was
of
a
the
resistance
road
group in
for
Hezbollah that
unity.
rose up against Israel to try to rid
Nothing's gonna
Lebanon,
last. Everything's
rid
gonna end.
Lebanon of Israel. So
end of the road
Ethan
for
does have,
unity.
like, again, a fundamental misunderstanding of the very nature of resistance groups, the nature of Hamas, and the power dynamics at play. Ethan, again, the goal of this stream, Ethan's like, there are 0 clips of me defending genocide. Why do the Try Guys say I've said some wild things about Palestine?
We've all been put here to witness the end. The only one. Sure. Who's known it since I was born.
And it's just a very poor understanding of the situation. He's coming into this under the impression that like Israel and Palestine are on semi-equal footing, where Hamas is a governing body and Israel needs to, like, they're a governing body, but they hate Israel. They're fundamentally opposed to Israel. And Hassan's basically saying they're a resistance group. Their point is that they are going to resist Israel, but if they have nothing to resist, then they're not going to exist as a group anymore. And Ethan just doesn't understand that. He's like, we need to get rid of Hamas first. And yeah, we all know that getting rid of Hamas is essentially like code for we need to do genocide in Gaza.
Gaza. You can only deal with it as a political problem.
But how do you do politics with the terrorists with Hamas?
Well, Israel has done politics with Hamas many times over. There has been ceasefires in between. Time and time again, so that's not even a, like, even if we're having this conversation, Israel itself is able to.
First of all, agreeing to a humanitarian ceasefire.
No, not even I'm not talking about like
Skyline.
I'm talking like ceasefires in between different sieges that have occurred into Gaza.
Okay, the ceasefire is different from having a peace partner.
A ceasefire is different than having a peace partner, but that is one form of negotiations, is what I mean. And
so
also, not only that,
it's such a big difference. I don't think it's fair to say that.
So Ethan's like, how do you negotiate with Hamas? They're terrorists, right? And Hassan's like, well, they've negotiated with them before. And Ethan's like, okay, yeah, but like that's different, right? Because in this case, Hamas is like, that was just a ceasefire. They're not actually a partner for peace. It's like, that's literally what a ceasefire is.
I mean, there's more.
Israel. Do you think Hamas would be a good partner in peace with Israel?
No, I do not. I do not believe that Hamas would be a good peace partner with Israel. I also do not believe Israel is a good peace partner for Palestinians in general. I think that is.
We agree. We agree.
So Hamas
My
in
piece
itself,
is just again to draw it back to that, is that the one-state solution will never happen, and starting from there is a non-starter. That's my thesis. But go ahead about Hamas.
Here is what is important to understand.
So Ethan's thesis is that the one-state solution is a non-starter, and it's never going to happen, and starting from a one-state solution is untenable. And this is just like the whole idea, like the whole Israel versus Palestine conflict flipped onto his head. Ethan's mind. Ethan's like, we need to start at the finishing point, but since that finishing point doesn't already exist,
It ain't
it's
working.
basically
We've
a
lost the
non-starter.
advantage. Team deathmatch.
I've literally been advocating for a one-state solution since 2004, kiddies. Like, literally, I wrote a a speech on it when I was in junior college. I was at the City Colleges here in Chicago. Did a talk on what year was this? It's like 2004, 2005.
Took out their sharpshooter.
Even then, I was like, one state solution. An economy that protects all, and a government and a political economy that protects everyone living in that on the river with the sea.
So again, he's kind of like throwing his hands up at the whole thing. We like, people don't want a one-state solution because they're literally killing Palestinians right now. So like that's a non-starter.
Already one state.
We can't even talk about a one-state solution right now. It's like that's the end point. We talk about solutions at the end. Right now, again, we have to get rid of the genocide.
Yeah, they're saying there can't be a one-state solution while they're shrinking, like, constantly the area that would be Palestinian state and settling on the areas that would be the Palestinian state. Like, what area exactly do they think that the second state's going to be on of the two states? It's moronic.
And it's backed by actual sentiment expressed by Likud party members, but of course Benjamin Netanyahu too. Hamas's and its existence as a violent Islamist fundamentalist cutout greatly benefits my design is the design of the Israeli government. This is something that Netanyahu openly mentioned as well last time around in 2019, where he said, if you want to thwart a Palestinian nation statehood, what you must do is govern against Hamas, because everyone sees them as terrorists. Everyone sees them as violent Islamist fundamentalist terrorists, and you can only control how high the flames go.
Who else is there to talk to?
First of all, there are actual leaders within the Palestinian movement that you could prop up, like the Palestinian Authority, instead of utilizing Fatah as...
That's what they want to do, but like... I mean, they don't want to do that. They want to... I think the goal is to remove Hamas and call the Palestinian Authority, but I don't think it's popular, and it seems the public... The Gazans will not accept the PLO because they'll look like stooges to the Israeli government. So if the wall is lifted up, so who's in charge? Is it Hamas? Is it PLO? How is this happening?
At this stage, before the walls are lifted up or anything, what needs to happen is a ceasefire, so that there can be an actual continued negotiation to release the hostages, right? That's number one, first and foremost. So first you need to do a ceasefire. Then you need to do a prisoner swap, a hostage release for...
You're starting too far back. Let's just go to the point where... Okay. You know what I mean?
And then beyond that, what needs to happen is, just like it happened in genuinely disastrous, even though it was...
I mean, I really don't like this kind of
we got the lead.
Conversation from Ethan here. He's saying, Hassan's like, okay, these are the steps we need. These are the steps that need to happen in order to have like a long-standing peace.
Target deleted.
Basically, in order to have like equality in Israel and Palestine. We need to have a ceasefire, and then we need to have a hostage exchange. There needs to be reparations, and then we can do all of this. And he's like laying it out step by step. And he's like, you're starting too far back. And what does he mean by that? He's like, I want to skip all of that part and just go into like after all of that's already happened. And I don't like that, because Ethan is operating in this hypothetical world of like, let's ignore all of the atrocities that Israel's committing right now and focus on like the hypotheticals of if we did all of it, like let's hypothetically, if we did all of that, then what would happen? And then he'd be saying like, oh, well, you can't do the PLO. The PLO would look like stooges. You can't do negotiations with Hamas because Hamas is fundamentally opposed to Israel. So he's like, let's skip all of the steps that would bring these countries closer together and jump to the hypothetical of like when you're actually trying to get down to the nitty-gritty details of peace and the flaws with that. And of course the flaws with that are like the PLO is not trustworthy. Israelis wouldn't like it. Hamas hates Israel. And then he's like targeting that when that's a conversation to have. It's not the important conversation to have right now. And he's skipping over all of the necessary details to end immediate suffering, immediate injustice that's going on. And then those steps would create conditions to make peace more feasible. It is kind of a positive feedback loop, right? Like if you're not fighting each other, then suddenly you don't you might not see the person as a straight up enemy immediately. And then maybe you start like, maybe less radical groups rise up. Maybe Hamas becomes less radical and less violent against Israel. Maybe Netanyahu gets arrested by the ICC and a more moderating force in Israel does come up that is open to a one-state solution. So I don't like how Ethan wants to say, like, we'll skip past all of the steps that need to take place in order to have this conversation and just have the conversation now, but in the context of the current state of Israel and the current state of Hamas and Palestine. So, yeah, again, he's like, right now, Israelis hate Hamas and they hate Palestinians, so they would never be a one-state solution. And I don't even want to talk about starting a ceasefire because I want to start at the point of the final step of peace.
Hostile RCXD in your
Why do we need to start at that point? And that's like I don't know, that's a big issue that Ethan's doing.
Haven't you heard? No one stays dead anymore. So that and Palestinians need to security from the state of Israel. Israel has to show good faith for the first time that since its inception, so that Palestinians can have a normal political process and be able to actually vote for a group of individuals that would lead them in civil governance without becoming a militant faction. In this process, I do not believe that it would be Hamas that wins out. Most Palestinians do not consider Hamas to be good at civil governance in general. They are not as popular as Israel makes it seem they are. They're simply the only option the Palestinians seemingly have in retaliating violently against Israel in times when Israel violates the ceasefire protocols by doing a steady maintenance of the apartheid structure that it maintains. Anytime Sheikh Jarrah is raided, anytime Al-Aqsa is raided, anytime there's a Flag Day protest that occurs in Jerusalem, like these are all incredibly violent expressions of the apartheid regime deliberately turning around and totally violent in the West against people who have no legal recourse, against people that are led under military mandate.
I agree with everything you're saying. But to go back to the original point, don't you think it's more likely? Like, I think this is infinitely more likely, even though it's very difficult, especially now. But to remove all the settlements, just fuck all of them off, those scumbag freaks. Give it back to the Palestinians, and you can do the security assurances and the negotiations and all of that while Palestine has its own sovereign country. That's good. And like I think in the original idea, there was going to be
that's more violent than a one state. Like you think Israel would be able to successfully take out 471,000 settlers living in the West Bank, and also another 300,000 more East Jerusalem is occupied, but now also permanently under Israeli rule.
You're planning on giving up. Do it now. If not, get to work.
Yes, I do.
Dude, there's no way. Like, all it takes is one thing. We've seen this time and time again in the history of this region. Like, it just takes one thing, like a bunch of psychotic Jewish fundamentalists going and and then the Palestinians respond by doing a horrific acts. And then you got to all out. Like, it takes so little to create all-out war.
I agree.
So little, dude. So
I agree, which is why they're...
Man.
You fucking me?
Again,
activate
cat
protocol. Get your ass back to
and
face.
to get back to like the thesis of this video, when Ethan says there's nothing that I say that's bad against Palestinians, we can look at this, right? This is a huge white supremacist talking point where you're saying if we were trying to assimilate minorities into white neighborhoods, that's extremely violent. We should just have separate but equal neighborhoods. We should have a white neighborhood and a black neighborhood and white schools and black schools. And then all of the other races too. Indian reservations. Yeah, like, let's keep it segregated. Asian countries have ethno-states. Why can't we have an ethno-state as Americans? So let's just really break down what Ethan is saying here. He said, I'll just rewind it a little bit. He said, like, you think assimilating a population into Israel is less violent than uprooting hundreds of thousands of people. That's literally what he said. Let's just run this back.
But now also permanently under Israeli rule.
You think that fully integrating the populations would be less violent?
Yes. I do.
Dude, there's no way. Like, all it takes is...
So you think fully integrating Palestinians into Israel is less violent than uprooting hundreds of thousands of settlers? And then the evidence that Ethan uses for that is, he's like, well, there's no way because one of these groups would do hate crimes to the other group and then a war would break out. It's like, Ethan, if they're fully assimilated, it's much harder for a war to break out than if they were living in fucking segregated zones. Like, what are we talking about here? Obviously, if they're living in segregated zones, then you can target the people that are living in, like, the Palestinian reservation or you'll target the people that are living in Israel proper, like the Palestinians would do that. If they're assimilated, who are you going to target? If a group of Jewish fundamentalist crazy fuckers like torched a mosque or something, and then like a Palestinian organization condemned it, or like there was violence against that, that would be extremely isolated violence, because there's no potential for it to grow further than that. Like maybe there'd be protests in the streets, but it's not like you can do like military style bombardments against entire like reservations of people with hundreds of thousands of people living there. Like maybe there would be a pogrom in a Palestinian neighborhood. That would be the extent of it. And Ethan's saying we need to have separate but equal, so that each group of people, each class, each ethnicity can have their own space to like relax in, right? This is extremely reactionary thinking. This is anti-Palestinian thinking. He does think the Palestinians are inferior, right? Because he's saying assimilation would be more violent than segregation. That's what he's saying. So when, again, like to go back to the thesis, the Try guys are saying Ethan said some really fucked up shit about Palestinians. This is one of the fucked up things that he's saying. Ethan is a believer in apartheid state. He's a believer in a Jewish apartheid state, a Jewish ethno state. And this is more examples of it.
One thing, we've seen this time and time again in the history of this region. Like, it just takes one thing of like a bunch of psychotic Jewish fundamentalists going and doing horrible fucking acts, and then the Palestinians respond by doing horrific acts, and then you got to all out. Like, it takes so little to create all-out war. It's so little, dude.
I agree, which is why there needs to be an international presence and a steady pressure to ensure that that there is political pressure applied on specifically the Israeli side to ensure that there's a lasting peace process. This has happened time and time again. It happened in the dissolution of the apartheid state. It happened with the Good Friday Agreement that ended the Troubles, and it always will happen, because I believe that no matter how much we fight, I think peaceful solutions are our natural state. We want to fucking coexist with one another. And the example I always use is when you look at Europe, right, which is a borderless utopia now, like the EU, the European Union, there's freedom of movement. Those guys have fought one another since the cousin fucker days for far longer than they've actually peacefully coexisted with one another. And now it seems impossible to think of a time when these guys would, kill one another for 100 years. I mean, World War II happened not that long ago. The Holocaust happened not that long ago. And now when you think about it, Germany can peacefully coexist with all of the other surrounding countries. So
is that the timeline we're on, like 100 years or something?
It would take multiple decades, but it's not like, I mean, it happened almost instantaneously after World War II. When you look at like civil governance in Germany, it was almost instant.
You mean after a horrific world war where like tens of millions of people died and countries were forever changed and traumatized, then they were able to create a lasting peace?
Yes. And that does not happen. That does not need to happen.
Okay.
No, I'm saying even in a situation like that,
what's the parallel to the Middle East?
Even in a situation like that where millions died, right? Millions, tens of millions died, you can still find lasting peace almost overnight. And that's precisely what I'm saying. It's perfectly reasonable to assume, as long as there's international pressure and that there is accountability and control, and a committee designed specifically to dish out punishments for war criminals on both sides, according to the International Criminal Court, when there's a Truth and Reconciliation Committee in a similar capacity to the aftermath of World War II, and there's reparations afforded and a right to return to Palestinians, there will be no need for violence. This has happened in the past, and it can happen again. It seems unlikely because we're very conditioned to thinking like, oh, what is going on right in front of my eyes is exactly how it's been in a long time, and it can never change. Except it absolutely has changed, and it absolutely can change, and it will change. And that's why I use other examples like I mentioned, Ireland or the ANC and apartheid South Africa. This happened in our lifetime.
If you look at peace in Europe, I think this was possible from rising from the ashes of a ruined continent where unspeakable horrors that people didn't even think were possible occurred, capped off with a nuclear bomb. And by the way, Europe, the characterization of Europe as a utopia is interesting. But I want to say this.
Capped off with a nuclear bomb? Did I miss a nuclear? I mean, are they talking about the... What are they talking about? Are they talking about like the Chernobyl nuclear reactor meltdown? What nuke happened in
America,
Europe?
Or sanctions against Israel you think would influence Israel to drop their borders? How have sanctions against Russia been going?
Thank you for saying that. Russia is a foreign adversary that has always positioned itself with the full knowledge that support from America...
Okay, well, we're about halfway through this stream. And I want to get to next time, the next stream I want to finish covering this. Or we're halfway through this video. I'm going to end it. And next time I want to cover like Ethan talking about from the river to the sea, because I think that's a pretty funny conversation. And then there's another part in this conversation where Ethan says that I concede so much ground to you, Hassan. You never concede any points to me. I feel like I'm getting the short end of the stick with this, and it's like, well, Ethan, you admit you're uneducated in terms of like the politics, you know. Wasn't the point of the whole Leftovers show Hassan teaching you about politics and you just absorbing it like a sponge? Like, it's not a debate. Anyway, I feel like I made some points here where Ethan has been like pretty dehumanizing Palestinians. He's been demeaning to people who have like didn't vote for Kamala Harris because of the genocide that's going on. He's consistently demonstrated a pretty reactionary ideology when we're talking about the apartheid state between Israel and Palestine, and how if you let in Palestinians to Israel, that would be bad for people. He weaponizes ignorance by hiding behind the opinions and views of Israeli Jews. Let's just be honest, he's using that as a tool to express his own. But he's like hiding behind that. And then he also weaponizes ignorance by not being specific about what he's talking about here. And I really wish Hassan would like walk him through this even more. Like Hassan's doing a lot of dog walking with Ethan right now. Just like, okay, sniff this bush. Oh, you want to go over here? Okay, let's go over there. You want to piss on this tree? Let's go over there. Like he's really just like being very patient, caring with Ethan here, addressing a lot of his issues. But I think that Hassan should push back on Ethan a little bit more. And in the second half of this video, which we'll probably cover later this week, he does push back against him more. And then the other issue, though, is that Ethan's not really listening to Hassan. Anyway, yeah, we'll watch this later. Thanks everyone that's tuning into the stream. I'm gonna head off. Have a great rest of your day. Here, say goodbye to my dog.
Watch me pointing that shit ass.
He's been sleeping during this film, so I might take him for a walk, just like Hassan walked Ethan. And then also, like, go into the comments of this video. Let me know what else you want me to cover. Oh my God! Oh, that reminded me of another video that I was thinking. Okay, maybe there will be more stuff about this later in the week. But yeah, let me know what else you want me to cover. I appreciate all the comments. Mango, I know you're a troll, but I'm really proud of my community for just like shutting your shit down. So anyway.
Hardpoint locked down. Hardpoint located. Hostiles have captured the hardpoint.
Step out of the car. Ben, move over here.
Hands up, please.
Why are you doing this?
Let me ask you this. What did you do to that girl? Ben, what's up there? Come down with your hands up now.
Move up. Marksman is down.
Blood on this wall. Yeah, this looks like dried blood.
These cops just found the bloodstains of a missing girl. Samantha Guthrie left her mother's house the previous day, never to be seen again, and her blood was just discovered on the walls of this abandoned house. But the police are about to realize that this is a couple's murder house, and the killers have already fled across town, hunting for their next victim.
Why don't you explain what's going on?
With no idea who the next victim of the killer couple could be, and with time running out, detectives find themselves entangled in a web of multiple suspects, all tied to the abandoned murder house.
You're looking at some serious problems.
I got nothing to say to y'all. Not my attorney present, nobody else sitting here, I got nothing to say.
Help us. This is serious. You should deserve to be killed like this.
Watch me pointing that shit ass hat.
Everything started in November 2018, when the mother called police worried that her daughter had vanished without a trace. It had already been more than a day since anyone had seen 18-year-old Samantha Guthrie, and the cops arrived quickly to take her mother, Joni's, statement.
What's going on? Okay, 4. Okay. How old's your daughter?
She's 18.
Okay, so what makes her missing?
We can't find her. We got a call yesterday saying she was shot in the head, in the trunk of a car, and they took off. The police were called yesterday. They went over to the house that was supposedly having that. They checked. They said they didn't see anything.
Right. Okay. And where was this supposed to be at? Lillian. Where's Lillian at? I've never heard of it.
Little did this cop know, he'd become extremely familiar with Lillian Street, as it would become the site of hours and hours of investigation and one of the most disturbing crimes to come out of the city in years. But for now, it sounds as though Samantha was murdered, or at the very least kidnapped. But nobody can be sure. All of this information came over a mysterious phone call from someone they didn't even know.
What's the address again?
Hardpoint identified.
Why would she be over there?
Because she's starting getting into bad stuff. You fucking blind!
Okay. What's that? So that's the house right there?
I don't know what the house looks like. Okay. I didn't go there.
It turns out the house that Joni is talking about was due to be boarded up in just a few days. It's in a rough area of town and has been abandoned for months. And as Joni said, Samantha had been struggling heavily. She left home as soon as she turned 18 and instantly fell in with a bad crowd. She was often seen frequenting abandoned houses known to be used by drug abusers and criminals. And she was slowly getting more distant from her family.
Yeah, the Lillian address is vacant. And they also had it closed up. So, any
After this, Joni would give over a description of Samantha, including a distinctive butterfly tattoo on her right arm, before telling the cop one more crucial piece of information.
Okay, sure.
This wasn't a familiar name to police, and the officers still wouldn't seem to be too worried by the situation, but that would soon come to change. Because the very same evening, after publishing a missing persons report of Samantha, a lone man would come to police claiming he knew exactly what happened to her and would lead police to launch a months-long investigation into multiple people all connected to the abandoned murder house. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about Surfshark, the sponsor of today's video. Surfshark can help you save money, secure your browsing, and even unlock way more TV shows and movies than you currently have access to. Sounds crazy, right? But it's true. If you have Netflix, Prime Video, or pretty much any other streaming platform, they limit what content you can actually view. For example, in the US, you can't watch Friends, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, or Pulp Fiction on Netflix. But if you use Surfshark, you can watch all 3 of them on Netflix. And that's not all. Surfshark also keeps your internet browsing safe and secure. Did you know that whoever provides you with your Wi-Fi can potentially see every website you visit? With Surfshark's VPN, all of this is hidden. Plus, many websites track your activity and will increase prices on products you frequently view or purchase. By using a VPN like Surfshark, you can avoid being tracked by any website and literally save money. And the best part, they're running a huge Black Friday sale where you can get 4 extra months of Surfshark at an unbeatable price. All you need to do is head to surfshark.com/insanity or click the link in the description. Grab your Surfshark for less than a cup of coffee a month and you'll get 4 extra months for free. With that said, let's get back to the case. Back in Akron, police had just published a detailed description of Samantha, and the morning after, a very worried man would contact and claim to have details that could either save her life or lead them to her body.
All right, today is Tuesday, and we're here with, what's your first name?
John Marshall.
All right, so we're here to talk about something that happened over on Lillian Street back in November 4th.
Mm-hmm.
All right, why don't you tell me about what happened that night?
John Marshall was the first of many witnesses in this case, and he got in contact with the cops after hearing that they were looking for Samantha. Apparently, he was actually at the house on the the night everything happened and saw it all with his own 2 eyes. The problem is, it almost sounds too good to be true. The cops don't know Marshall and can't necessarily trust him to give a truthful statement, meaning they'll have to verify all evidence he gives over. So as Marshall talks to the cops, we'll be keeping track of each piece of information and then following how the cops investigate and verify it all in order to hopefully solve the case and find Samantha.
Sam had been trying to get a ride over to the house for a few hours. I didn't feel like driving anymore to go pick her up, so I didn't pick her up that night. And a few hours later, she showed up from an Uber, I'm guessing, that her dad had.
All right, now when you say the house, what's the address?
75 Lillian.
Okay.
I'm guessing, from what I've been told, her dad paid for an Uber for her to get over there.
Okay.
This is already an easy piece of information to verify. If Samantha's dad did pay for the Uber, then he'd certainly remember that and be able to confirm it. And conveniently, the cops had interviewed her dad a few hours later, and he did indeed tell him that he'd bought her an Uber that night. On top of that, the address Marshall gave was also correct, so it seems that he's turning out to be trustworthy so far.
But I was walking to the Circle K on Copley and Rhodes to get cigarettes and a soda when I seen her and Yoshi walking to the house on Lillian. And about a half hour after I got back to the house, and half hour, 45 minutes or so, Danny showed up and knocked on the back door. I answered the door.
Now, how do you know Danny?
Just in passing.
Do you know him from the house?
Yeah.
And you know what his last name is?
Hamby.
Now, things are starting to get weird. That's the name that Joni said could be the killer, and Marshall seems to know him and the people he's friends with.
Okay, was he by himself?
No, he was with Tony.
Okay.
Is what I was told her name was. And that one black guy that I've never seen before.
Okay, do you know what he looks like?
Yeah. I think, what's his name? Marcus? Something with an M, I want to say. Or
what's he look like?
William.
Okay, William. All right, what's he look like?
Tall, about 6'2", 6'3", 225, medium build,
okay,
dark skin.
So they came up to the back door.